Hi, everyone. Welcome to Love with Francesca, where we deep dive into conversations about relationships, self-love, and the empowering journey to authentic connection and healing. Today, we have a good friend of mine. Alex is here with us to chat. We're going to get into it, but we have a very interesting topic, and I'm excited to hear about it. So thank you for being here.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me, Francesca. I'm so happy to be here. So happy to see you.
Amazing. Me too. Me too. It's been a minute. So just to let everyone know a little bit about you, I'll be paraphrasing kind of the bio that you sent me, but I also love how Alex presents herself. I was just telling her before we logged on, but she's a coach, she's a mom, she's a real person. She likes wine, vacations, and spending time with her family. Also, after a few months of being friends with her, I discovered that she lived on a ship for a year in Panama, the country, not the city,
Mhm.
managing a remote high-end marlin fishing lodge in the Pacific Ocean. Pretty cool. So clearly you're an adventurous, spontaneous person to a certain degree. So, but now she's dedicated to helping high-achieving women, especially moms in executive senior leadership, succeed at work while staying present, being connected at home, and leading fulfilled and balanced lives. She's not just a coach, she's also a licensed mental health psychotherapist. She has a practice that's active in 3 different states. And before going into business herself, she had over 10 years of experience in level leadership in a large nonprofit focused on education and mental health. Like we said, she's a mom with two young daughters, and she knows way too well the fact that if left unchecked, career pressure and burnout can take over your life. So that's pretty much how she became an executive burnout coach.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. So impressive. I'm just like, at first I actually wasn't reading people's bios because I was like, oh, I don't want to just focus on like the accomplishments of someone's life, but I do think it's helpful to kind of give a sense of like, who are you? Why are we talking about what we're talking
Yeah,
about? And like, why am I talking to you about what I'm
right,
talking about?
right. Give a little
So
bit of context. I like it.
little bit of context. So, we talked a bit about like what brought you to where you are in the type of people that you're helping. But if you could maybe share like an anecdote or a story or something to give us an idea of like what inspired you to get into the executive leadership space and what inspired you to help women, moms that struggle with burnout at this level.
Sure. Well, that was definitely me. I mean, I was, at the executive level and a mom of two little ones who are now 8 and 9. But at the time, just going through it, working a ton of hours, had a long drive to and from the office, in the office 5 days a week, and just spending, probably more time than I should have on work, and realizing that I wasn't alone because a lot of my, you know, female friends who were also moms were kind of experiencing the same thing. So when I started a private therapy practice in 2019, kind of focusing on executive moms and high achieving mom, professional moms, the women were coming into the therapy space thinking that they had something going on that they needed, mental health help for, anxiety, depression. And as I kind of unraveled that a little bit and I saw this pattern in this population of women, I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't like a diagnosable mental health condition. This is professional burnout. This is very different. And so there are some overlaps in what that looks like. But not everybody needs therapy. Not everybody wants therapy. And sometimes people need a different type of support. So I looked at a lot of kind of executive coaching programs, but they were all just focused on the leadership component, just, hard skills, soft skills, how to be a better leader, how to run a team, how to run a meeting. And there wasn't the component of the whole person and the whole woman. So I thought, well, I should just create one. And so that's what I did. And then so now it's just for the whole person. And the focus is really helping moms and women understand that professional burnout is not the norm and you
Mhm.
don't have to work like that. And I figured it out for myself. And then I wanted to kind of share how I figured it out and help other people do the same.
That's so beautiful. I don't think I knew about that in that way as you just described it. So that's really cool. So just also for context, Alex and I met in a group coaching program, and there's some other women that I've been lucky to interview already for the podcast that were in that coaching program. And similar to you and I, they had had a life experience. They were therapists, and then they saw their life experience being played out, like the struggles that they experienced being
Mm,
played out in their clients. And then they were like, wait a minute, this isn't a this I mean, like you said, it overlaps with clinical diagnoses, but it's not necessarily always a clinical diagnosis.
correct,
So you
correct.
want to create like that support for them outside of the therapeutic space.
Mhm.
Um, and another thing that came to my mind when you were talking is like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine that typically like the women that you see are quite like strong, powerful, like, confident kind of women. I would imagine that it's quite difficult for them to admit that they need therapy, or like things need to get really bad before they need therapy. So
Mhm.
maybe, and working with you from a coaching perspective is a bit easier to access in terms of like the stigma of accessing that kind of help.
I would definitely agree with that. I think a lot of
Mhm.
times people come to therapy when they're already in crisis,
Mhm.
where something bad has happened, or
Yeah.
or something is about to happen, and then they're kind of doing this crisis intervention. Whereas in coaching, it's definitely, I mean, at least from my perspective, seen as more of like a preventative or even like a growth tool,
Hmm.
rather than like a treatment option.
Hmm.
Also, it's very common for executive level, people to have coaches. Sometimes people even require it in organizations. Okay, if you're going to be the CEO, you're going to have to work with a coach because you're going to need some kind of support. So
Mm.
I think it's very, and it's also a lot of times employers will pay for it, which is also a nice little bonus. Whereas, a lot
Yeah.
of times employers don't pay for therapy. So
Yeah.
it's kind of it's a nice option for people who want like a very specialized kind of niche, and this is really any coaching, right? That you want like a specialized niche kind of support. But again, like don't need or don't want therapy.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Can you talk to us about like I'll call it like the symptoms, but like a person that typically comes to ask for your help, what is it that tangibly, what is it that they're struggling with?
Okay, this is a really good question. I'm gonna give you like two answers.
Go
Um,
ahead, take your
okay,
time.
so one is more of like the actual definition of burnout, and then I'll kind of talk about like what it looks like in real life.
Yeah.
So there actually is a definition of professional burnout. It's from the World Health Organization, and that came out in 2019. So for a long time, it was just like, oh, people just don't want to work, or kind of had a bad stigma around it. But the World
Yeah.
Health Organization in 2019 came out with a definition, and it's categorized by three separate things. So one is going to just be that sheer exhaustion, not, oh, I'm tired, I had a bad day, but that just sheer, your body's tired, you can't get out of bed, your brain is tired, you're disconnected, you're just depleted completely.
Mhm.
And the second thing is going to be your cynicism and distance from work. So just kind of super negative. Maybe it used
Mhm.
to be something that you were really passionate about, and now you're just over it completely. Can't understand why you're in the field, don't want to do you want to do something, anything would be better. You know, being, I don't know, you just have business ideas all the time. You can't, so you want to get completely as far away as you can from what you're doing currently. Um, and then the last thing is the professional efficacy. So that's where, things that used to take you 5 minutes, boom, 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 you're checking off your list, now take you all day. So you're like, oh God, what did I do all day? And you can't remember what you did, or you don't feel productive, or you have all these lists going, but nothing's getting done. You're just not being your outcomes are not as great as they once were. So
Mhm.
that's kind of like the World Health Organization definition. So it's not a diagnosis, but it is categorized in ICD-10 and ICD-11 code, so it can be tracked for research purposes. So that's a good thing, because that means it's being recognized as like something that's real, and not just
Yeah.
saying like, I don't want to work hard. Uh,
Yeah.
and then kind of like what that looks
Do you mind
like.
if I stop you for a
Yeah.
second? Because I would imagine that too, like the worst thing that someone would want to hear themselves say in that moment is that you just don't want to work hard enough, because it's like quite the opposite of like what that person built their whole career and identity on. So that would be quite insultive to someone. Sorry, just to add that in
Yeah,
there.
no,
Yeah, that
absolutely. I
makes
think that
sense.
a lot of people think like, well, you're an executive. I mean, of course you have to work hard. Of course you have
Yeah.
to work late nights. That's, and then this is like the real life definitions that I hear all the time, is people saying, well, that's just what I signed up for. They're like, yeah, I'm a CEO or I'm a chief and I've got two kids and this just is my life right now. There is
Mm,
no other way to do it. There is no other option. There is no relaxing. There is no self-care. This is what I signed up for. You know,
yeah.
people will just say, a lot of times people tell me they'll snap at their friends or their partner or their kids, like a real short fuse. They'll say things like, I just don't know how to get out from this. There's nothing I can eliminate from my calendar. Um, I have to do it because nobody else will do it. If I don't do it, no one else is going to do it. And even if they do, it's going to take me 2 weeks to explain to them how to do it correctly. And I don't have that time. So I'm just going to do it. I'll hear people say that, that they don't have time to do, fill in the blank of whatever, taking care of themselves because they just need to take care of everybody else all day. I hear people
Mhm.
say, like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I've worked my whole life to be an attorney, and now I want to be like a florist.
Yeah.
I want to be like a substitute teacher. Like, so there's something
Yeah.
completely on the other end of the spectrum. When I was
Yeah.
kind of going through my own stuff, I remember like daydreaming about being a dog groomer. I'm like,
Yeah.
I want to be a dog groomer. Because it sounds so nice. It's just like groom
Yeah.
dogs all day. I
Yeah.
even like Googled like how to become a dog groomer because I'm like, oh, this will definitely be way better than what I'm doing now. So you're just you're so disconnected from this, career that you spent your whole life building that you just want to, it's like anything but you feel trapped.
Yeah, it really sounds like that by the way that you're describing it. Like even thinking of the calendar example that you gave,
Mhm.
um, it's like nothing can be removed from the calendar. And like skipping ahead, but like you and I both know that's not true in a sense.
Mhm.
Like things can be removed, but it is true. Like when you're in that mindset, it really does feel that way. Like everything that has to be done is so essential and it
Mhm.
all relies on me and it depends on me. And if I don't do it, everything's going to collapse. And like if it all collapses, like everything that I worked for, like,
Mhm.
is going to
Mhm.
collapse and the family's going
Yes.
to collapse. And so it's just
Mhm.
like impending doom kind of if you remove like one thing from the calendar,
Yes.
two things from the
Yes. Oh my
calendar.
gosh. Yes. 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 You're 100% right. Yeah.
Is there more that you would like to share about what people going through this are experiencing or what the signs kind of are?
Sure. People come to me and they feel pretty defeated, pretty out of touch with their own body. They're not
Mhm.
really connected. They're going through the motions and they're doing the things and they're leading their teams. But, if I ask, like, well, how does it show up for you in your body? They're like, what are you saying?
Like that's I don't know what that
Like
means.
what? Excuse me? Oh, I'm supposed to be like in touch with my body? Yes. A lot of
Yeah.
times people will tell me they just have like random pains. These are like healthy, youngish people, and they're just hurting. Their bodies are hurting. They're tense, a lot of like shoulder, neck, head pain, eye pain, random, just things happening with their bodies that there's no like medical explanation. It's not like
Yeah.
there's some, physical diagnosis. Their bodies are screaming at them
Yeah.
and, the physical pain is showing up. A lot of times people will tell me that when they get home from work, they can't turn it off. They're putting their kids to bed and they're thinking about their emails. They're trying to have dinner and they have their phone in their hand. They can't be present. They're always thinking about work. They will like sit on and then they kind of like, a lot of times people tell me that they'll do some type of activity to just like zone out. A lot of times it's, Netflix and wine and just sitting on the couch and scrolling and just doing those like mindless activities to try and distract themselves from thinking about work.
Hmm.
A lot of times there's a lot of disconnection there, like in a marriage or a partnership.
Hmm.
Um, the partnership is suffering
Mm.
because the burnout is so intense and such a kind of like main character in that
Hmm.
person's life that they can't even feel connected to the other person. A lot of times, these women are used to doing everything on their own.
Hmm.
So asking for help and support is like
Hmm.
not part of my game plan because I don't need it because I'm independent and I'm empowered. I'm gonna do everything myself and I don't need
Yeah.
your help or anyone else's.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh my
and then
gosh. Yeah. I feel like you're just
yeah.
I feel like you're just like describing like who I would have become in like 10 to 15 years. Like 100%.
Yes, 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 yes. And it's so easy to get there, especially when you're,
Yeah.
smart and strong and you have career goals and you
Yeah.
just kind of like lose sight of what's most important, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And everything, I mean, from the back pain to the I have to do it myself to that I have to do it myself. Yeah, I've dealt with that, but it's mostly like the whole like I have to prove that I'm capable of being able to do it. And so I can't ask for help because if I ask for help, then I'm kind of like admitting in a way that I'm actually not capable of doing it, and I can't do that. That's terrifying.
Mhm.
It's funny, we're meeting right now, and you don't know this, but I just got back from my physiotherapist who's an expert in chronic pain because now I'm aware that I have that. And
Mhm.
he's like describing to me like your body's like screaming at you, like you said.
Mhm.
And over the past year that I've known you, I've become more aware of like my signs for burnout that I experience. And it is like the pain and the disconnection from the people in my life. And it is the whole like my eye starts twitching. And like once I know my eye is twitching, I'm like, that's it, we got to stop. Like we have
Yep.
like
Yep.
crisis
Yes.
intervention moment. We
Yes.
need
Yes.
to
Yes.
slow
Yes.
down. Like we're going down a bad path here. But I could see how like I'm able to do that now because I've done so much work on myself. I've learned to respect my body and listen to my body. I'm still learning that. It's still a struggle. But I could definitely see how if you don't have any of that like self-awareness when it comes to your body, or you're just used to like ignoring and like dismissing all those signs, like they could just keep getting worse and worse and worse. And you're just like trailblazing over them, kind of like you're just like a machine that's going,
Yes.
going, going. This needs to be done.
Uh-huh.
This needs to get done. And I'm not even in like I set my own deadlines right now. So then
Mhm.
at that point, I'm like, oh, Francesca, you're just creating your own crazy because you could be choosing a different deadline. But I could see how if like our belief systems attract a reality to match that belief system, someone like me would easily attract a workplace that has really high expectations for me. And I have to meet all those expectations. And then it's like, how do you then when you're in a workplace like that, how do you then start to listen to yourself and set those boundaries without like completely going against the current of what's expected of you? Does that make sense?
Um, yeah, it makes sense. And I think that a lot of times it's not what's expected of us. It's like these unrealistic expectations that we're putting on ourselves.
Oh, it
Um,
still is the unrealistic expectations.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, nobody is saying you better answer that email within 30 seconds at 2 a.m.
Right.
Nobody's being told that.
Right.
No one. But it's that a couple things that you mentioned about the body, and like I always tell people, like
Yeah.
your body is really good at telling you what it needs, but you have to know how to listen to it. And people don't, I mean, because we're in the field, we talk about mindfulness and we know what it is, and we're familiar with it, but that's not like a main topic of conversation, like when you're going to happy hour with your friends. We're not talking
Yeah.
about like how did that show up in your body? I mean, people aren't like it's not like a real common thing that I think people know and understand that our bodies truly like can tell us so much about what we need and what we want, but we have to learn how to listen. So that's kind of part of, you know,
Yeah.
what I do with the women that I work with. But
Makes sense.
um, your question was, how do you scale back?
Yeah. Yeah. How do you start scaling back? Because you're
So
already like you've built like a whole web of like dynamics that you now have to like continue working to sustain. So how do you kind of undo all that?
well, a couple ways. So I always start with like not too many tangibles because I
Hmm.
always say like if you just want a list of 10 ways to improve your work-life balance, you could Google that, and
Yeah.
and print it out and put it on your desk and be good to go.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with a personal core values assessment, which
Hmm.
has nothing to do with work. It's just like who you are as a person, who you are internally, and like what are the things that you want to live by. And
Mm.
usually I ask people, what are your personal core values? And they're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. So we talk about, is that, honesty? Is that family time? Is that communicate? What are the things that make you who you are? It's like almost like a family crest, but for an individual. So we kind of start there and explore that. And then we say like, okay, these are your personal core values. They don't shift when you go to work. They don't shift when you're on vacation. They don't shift when you're sleeping. This is who you are. This makes up the main components of who you are as a human. These are like your values to live by. And so this is going to show up for you wherever you are. And sometimes that's just like a good anchor in the process, before we say, turn your notifications off, because anyone can say that. So we're going to start with that. Um, and then so we'll do that, and then usually do more like when we kind of move to more of the tangible side, and then of course work through some mindfulness. So what I try to do is like build this foundation, right? Because a lot of times with, you know, intervention programs or coaching programs, you're only looking at here's what to do now, here's what to do next, here's a list of 10 things you need to do by the next time we talk. And
Yeah.
those are important, but those have to be secondary. Those have
Yeah.
to be after you build the foundation. That's like saying, go put that roof
Yeah.
on a house without like laying the
Yeah.
foundation. The
Well, also, they
foundation's,
already have so many things on their to-do list that if you just
yeah,
add another 10, it's like, oh my God, here's another way in which I'm
right.
not showing up perfectly. Even my coach is going to be disappointed in me, sort of thing.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So like
Mm.
laying the foundation first with core values, core beliefs, mindfulness. And then also I like to say, like before I ask them to do anything, like I would say that the pendulum right now is swung so far over to the one side of the work,
Mhm.
then instead of doing less work, you're just going to do more of like the things that you love, right?
Mhm.
So you have to find that internal validation that a lot of women are getting from that workplace stuff.
Mhm.
There's a lot of kind of reward systems that are built into work that aren't necessarily built into personal life as
Yeah.
tangibly as they are at work. Raises, promotions, bonuses,
Mm.
certificates, awards, employee of the month, employee of the year, CEO of the year, right? All these
Yeah.
things. And we're like, yay,
Yeah.
like, I'm proud of me. It's like a little kid
Yeah.
at an award ceremony. But in your
Yeah.
personal life, it's not like laundry doer of the month award, Your partner's not like, oh my gosh, like Francesca, that dinner was amazing, 10 out of 10, 5 stars.
Right.
You get
Right.
a raise. So a
Yeah.
lot of times we're like working for that internal validation because it feels good, right?
Mhm.
So we kind of like break that down a little bit.
That makes
Um,
a lot of sense,
and
especially
then,
if you don't have that kind of like internal validation for yourself, or you don't have it, like you said, in your personal life. Like, it's funny you said that. I do have a partner now who's super, if I make a delicious dinner, he's like, you did a great job and whatever. But you're right. Like, it gives me so much validation. It motivates me to keep doing that. But if I'm coming home and like the kids are crying and screaming, my husband's like stressed about his own thing, we haven't had sex in like 6 months, like, whatever, the list goes on and on. I'm not getting that personal validation at home. I don't know how to create it for myself. I'm only getting it at work. Of course, I'm just going to keep doing that work.
right. Right, exactly,
Mm.
exactly. So I kind of challenge people a little bit to um, force them. Sometimes they have to force themselves to find like happiness and joy and validation in things other than work. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be being mindful and present with your kid for 10 minutes when you weren't able to do that last week. It can be waiting an hour to reply to an email rather than 14 seconds. It can be planning a date with your partner and intentionally spending time with the people that you love. It can be moving your body. All right. So we talk a lot about like these foundational principles, and like I always start with like eat, sleep, water, nutrition, and mindfulness. Someone will be like, I don't know why I like can't think by the end of the day. And I'm like, well, what did you eat today? And I'll be like, 3 almonds at 2 p.m. And I'm like, okay, well, let's start there. And I'll be like, what did you
Yeah.
have to drink today? And they'll be like, 75 ounces of coffee
Yeah.
and a Diet Coke. And I'm like, oh, well,
Yeah.
okay, well, that's a start, but like,
Right.
maybe we can add some water to the mix. So it's like a lot of
Mm.
times, all of these things that are happening, like, yes, we want these like tangible results, but at the same time, like that foundation has to be good first before you do any of that other stuff.
Mm.
So we're going to spend some time on like making sure that the foundation of who you are as a person and as a woman, as in a professional, is solid so that it
Yeah.
can be a good support for the tangible things. Because if we're in session one and I'm like, turn off your notifications, set your boundaries, take all your PTO, go on vacation, they're never gonna come back.
Yeah.
You know what I
They're
mean?
gonna be like, this woman's
They're gonna
crazy.
be
She
like, she is
doesn't.
crazy. She didn't even like take a vacation. Does she know I'm a CEO? You know,
Yeah.
no, I'm not doing that.
They're gonna think you're like trying to get them fired or something, you
No,
know?
they're like, she doesn't even know what it's like to be an executive, you know?
Oh
So
my
like that's when
God.
we kind of start slow and
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
yeah.
And it's also because if we're thinking like when we're going at that pace, that speed of like get shit done, go, 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 you need the antidote to that, which is like slow down, like just start slow, just listen to yourself, like listen to how you feel in the moment that, X, Y, and Z happens. Like notice even start to become aware of like the reward mechanism that is happening at work, I imagine, so that you can see like, we work with in my dad's business with helping people in their careers. I noticed there's a lot of people that this reward system, it's like the carrot that's like dangling in front of them, but they never really get to fully eat it and taste it in the sense of they never get to fully feel that internal satisfaction because the second that like 3 days pass after the big award happened or whatever, that's it. The feeling's gone. It's a fleeting moment. So you have to learn how to like create it for yourself.
That's so true. That is so true. And like the phrase I use a lot is create space for yourself in your own life.
Hmm.
And yes, that is true. And that slowing down is a
Mhm.
really hard thing to do.
Yeah.
I look at
Talk
it
to
like,
us about why. Because I
oh
know
my
why for
God.
myself, but I don't know if that it's the same why for everyone.
Well, I
Why is
think
it
it's a
so
lot. I
hard?
think it's a lot of things. So, well, I think partially it's just like society and just our
Mhm.
environment, which is pretty set on everything being quick and fast and instant gratification. And we're going to get everything instantly. And we're getting food delivered to our door and we're getting, notifications on our phones pretty instantly. So some of it's just like those dopamine hits that you get, like when something
Yeah.
just happens like this. A lot of times I think that we, like the collective we, as like all of us, just have these really ridiculously high expectations of ourselves, of like what we should be producing as humans, whether that be like businesses or money or kids or whatever it is. Like we just have to kind of, we're always looking for the next best thing. You never hear people say like, I'm so content right now. I'm so good.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, well, my business and my family, and then next year, and then next year, and then next year. And so we're kind of always ahead instead of just being here, like right here. I think and then if you look at like specifically the population of high achieving women, specifically moms, they've always been on this like train.
Mm.
Right? They were the valedictorian in high school. They played, sports their whole lives. They were gymnasts. They were soccer players. They were, always National Honor Society, traveling to France when they were 6, like always doing like all of the things.
Yeah.
Always kind of like one step ahead, working really hard, getting into all the colleges, getting scholarships, getting their first job. Everything's kind of been go, 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 the next, the next, like this hamster wheel of like, but when does that end? And then also
Mm.
that kind of activates like our nervous system.
Mhm.
So our nervous system then recognizes that pace as its baseline, right?
Mm.
So those are the people who like, they can't lay on the couch and do nothing. They
Mhm.
might be laying on the couch, but they're folding laundry, watching TV, listening to a podcast, and on their phone with their grandma at the same time. And then,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
I do, I do.
I know. And I'll say, like, have you laid on the couch lately? And they'll be like, what do you mean? Like,
What do
and
you
do what? I'm
mean?
like, nothing.
Nothing. Just
No.
be.
Yeah, there's always something to do, So it's like,
Yeah.
again, like that baseline is operating like full throttle.
Yeah.
So that's what your body gets used to. It's like, I have to do this because this is my baseline. So teaching and training somebody how to not have that be their baseline, that's part of that foundational work. And that's hard. It's
Hmm.
hard because of all those reasons that I mentioned. So that takes some time.
Hmm. Of course. And the guilt that comes up when you slow down, I would imagine for the women that you work with as well, like the immense amount of guilt and shame that comes up when you start to slow down of like, you're not doing enough. You should be doing this. You're not doing the. And it's like very disorienting because if you're changing your way of doing stuff, but then the thoughts in your head are telling you that you're doing it wrong, it's hard to trust like this whole new way of living life. And that's a scary process. Shifting gears just a little bit. I'm curious, maybe even like alongside with the guilt, I'm just reflecting on a lot of what you're sharing with us, and I'm thinking like, okay, I'm listening to the high achieving mom, and I'm developing so much compassion for her, as much compassion as I've had to develop for myself working through all this. But I would imagine that if you don't understand internally the mechanisms that are happening for her and you're in a relationship with her, it's really easy to build a certain level of resentment because the same way in which she's not showing up for herself, she's probably not showing up for you in whatever type of relationship you are in her life. So maybe I don't know what kind of what direction I want to take this in, whether it's like, should we talk about how it comes up in the relationships, or should we talk about like how to even start mending those relationships?
Maybe we can do both.
Let's do both.
You want to do that?
Let's do both. I think that'd be helpful.
So do you want to talk a little bit about how it can show up in a relationship first?
Yeah, yeah. What does that look like in relationships? I mean, already she's struggling to be present. You gave the example of like she's putting her kids down to bed, but the emails are in her mind. So she's not actually present in that moment, right?
Right. So a lot of just like disconnection, a
Hmm.
lot of more like mechanical discussion about who's putting the kids to bed, who fed the dogs, who's doing, who's cleaning up the kitchen. What are we doing this weekend? There's not a whole lot of like, tell me about how you're feeling. Like, tell me about your day. Look me in the eye and talk to me about what's going on.
Yeah.
That kind of like intimate, emotional connection, that like psychological safety, that feeling just like cared for, um, is not there. I'm really on either side, right? A lot of
Hmm.
times it's the person who's feeling the burnout that is like distancing themselves because
Hmm.
they just don't have the capacity for like anything else. And then the
Yeah.
other person is kind of trying to, hey, what's going on? Are you okay? Like, hey, let's do this. Hey, do you want to spend some time? Hey, do you want to have sex? Hey, and then the person who's feeling burnout is kind of like, get out of my face.
Because
No,
does it just feel like another chore at that point? Like having to like even have sex, like it probably just feels like another thing that I have to do and I
yeah.
have to like push myself and force myself to do because I don't actually feel like doing it.
Yes, I mean, I hear it all the time, and it's not that, these women are not, they don't enjoy it. It's just they don't have the capacity to
Hmm.
have like an emotional connection after all that they've experienced. They're done. They're depleted. They're exhausted. And a lot of times that builds frustration and resentment in a
Hmm.
relationship. Um, because of course it would, right? So then people start to maybe like argue a little bit. Maybe one person doesn't understand. Like, it's just a job. Like, yeah,
Hmm.
you're the
Yeah.
boss, but like, it's just a job. This is like,
Yeah.
this is our family. This is our
Right.
relationship. And so
Right.
then the other person sometimes comes back and says, things like, um, I can't do it any differently. This is what I signed up for, right? And we have these kids. And so it a lot of times is a time where partnerships do have a hard time, right? It
Hmm.
can build like anger, resentment, the communication kind of slips, the intimate connection slips,
Hmm.
and then you're just kind of going through the motions.
Mm. Yeah. How much does gender norms play a role in this? So I'm thinking like high achieving moms, right? And I'm thinking of the beautiful rights and freedoms that we've been given as women that allow us to have incredible high achieving careers and also be moms at the same time. How often do you see, let's say for like a stereotypical heterosexual cisgender relationship and everything, how often do you see that this mom is also struggling because maybe there's a partner in the home who also still has like traditional gender expectations of her to take care of the house more than he does, even though she has this like career that takes up a ton of her time?
Super amazing question. Thank you for
Mhm.
asking that. And
Mhm.
so there's actually been research on this exact topic. Um,
Mm.
and so what the research says, and I cannot quote it off the top of my head, but if you want to put it in your note, I'll send you the article.
Please do,
Um,
yeah.
but so what it says is basically, kind of before when it was more of those traditional gender norms before a lot more women started entering the workforce. So we're talking like the 40s, 50s, right? When it was very traditional, man goes to work, woman stays home and raises the kids and takes care of the home. And again, this isn't everyone, this is just the generalization that was discussed in the study.
Yeah.
So then when it started to kind of transition to, let's say, present day, where it is very common for women to be in the workforce, working full time, owners of their own businesses, executives, chiefs, they're doing big things,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And that's made a bigger trend. That has happened faster than the transition of that in the household. So
Mm.
in the professional world, it's not uncommon to have, I mean, still there's more men, but if it's not uncommon to have female executives and CEOs.
Hmm.
But in the home, it's still not as equitable as it needs to be for both people to be working, these full-time executive level jobs. So, and that there has been progress, but the study is basically saying it hasn't kind of caught up. So then you have a woman who is, executive level, C-suite, owner of her own business, and then also managing the more of it's not equally distributed in the home. The home, because it's not just the kids, it's home, it's finances, it's social
Hmm.
engagements, it's holidays, it's grocery. I mean, it's all the things that go into running a
Hmm.
home.
Yeah.
And so it does kind of feel sometimes inequitable.
Yeah.
And then another point to this question is also a lot of times women will feel like they have to like prove themselves more so because they're maybe like, you know, they had to work so much harder to get to that place than traditionally maybe a man would in that same space. So
Hmm.
that just kind of constant, I've got to make sure that they know that I'm good at this, that like imposter syndrome. Like I got to make sure I'm really good at this. And that adds pressure, which adds expectations to yourself, which adds to the tangible burnout piece.
My gosh, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Just thinking through like, yeah, like there's just certain aspects of the female experience that maybe her partner won't understand. And if there isn't that intimacy and communication and psychological safety, like you said, even, I mean, there's been situations where like even if you do explain, there's things that I've explained to men in my life and they're even caring and they want to know and they want to understand and they ask the
Mhm.
right questions, but then I share it with them and because they haven't had that experience, they just don't get it and they
Mhm.
just can't like relate
I
to
know.
it or they just make comments of like, but just work less. Like you're good, you have the job and it's like, no,
Yeah,
you
you're good to
don't
go.
get
Just stop working so much.
it. Yeah, and it's like, no, you don't understand. But then
Mhm.
that whole like you should just be doing less, which comes off kind of judgmentally, even if though it's not intended that way, is obviously going to provoke a very defensive reaction of like, no, you don't understand. And
Mhm.
then that's it, communication
Mhm.
breaks down. So it
Yes.
sounds like in these relationships that you're talking about, there's just a lot of breakdown in communication. There's a lot of other things going on as well, but I feel like the bridge that would really help them is just like fully collapsing and like non-existent.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that like those open lines of communication in a relationship are going to be, again, like we talked about, foundations for getting out of burnout, and that would be, I would assume you would agree, but you tell me if you don't. But
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
like
obviously.
this like open and honest and authentic communication, not
Yeah.
just a hey, how you doing, how was your day? Like let's go a little deeper. You know,
Yeah.
that is going to be part of the foundation of what could potentially help a partnership
Hmm.
manage through a burnout cycle.
100%. But the thing is that in order to, like, I agree with you completely. And I don't even work with high achieving moms. They have so much, actually, I work with one of them and I see how two of them now that I think about it, and I see how much pressure they put on themselves. And the thing is that I also know that they often lack those communication skills. They lack, and so do their partners. Like, it's a two-way street here. And they also lack the self-worth to set the necessary boundaries or like stand up for themselves in a sort of way or like advocate for themselves in a sort of way. Whether it's at work or whether it's there in the relationship of like, hey, like I can't take care of all of this at home. Like I need you to also step in and take care of these pieces. And I need to like not just delegate the actual job of filling the juice box or whatever, but like I need you to remember that the juice box needs to be filled. That can't fall on me because then it's just like I can't even imagine I'm only one person has to just take care of myself in my tiny studio apartment and like my jobs. But I'm thinking like if you have children and you have an intense career and you have yourself to take care of and a home to manage, and a lot of people in the US also like love buying these like big homes that are so much work to manage.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you put all those things on a list. It's just like I just am imagining just never ending lists that just keep growing and growing, like a receipt thing that's like broken and just keeps spitting
Yeah.
out like orders and you're like and you're in the kitchen and you're like I can't even keep up with the orders that are coming in. Like
Yes.
how am I you're
Yes.
just drowning in orders, you know?
Yes. Yeah. And
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
for
a
sure. It's a
lot.
lot. There's a lot of
A lot.
contributing factors and like,
Yeah.
it's never, I think when when you have two people who are working full time and, one of them is experiencing burnout, yes, communication. And also then, going back to that equitable distribution of just like household tasks. So just kind of being
Yeah.
open and aware of what's going on and what it takes to run a household and knowing that it's
Yeah.
always like that's why I'm saying equitable, not equal. It's never going to be like 50-50. You have
Mhm.
your 2 chores a day and I have my 2 chores a day and then we'll be happy forever.
Yeah.
It's kind of like knowing that that's going to ebb and flow throughout your relationship, knowing like, hey, if I'm experiencing a burnout cycle and I also have deadlines at work and your week looks a little lighter, then like
Yeah.
maybe you're going to take on more that week. Maybe you're going to
Yeah.
take some stuff off my plate, but like being
Yeah.
aware of that and like
Yeah.
knowing what's happening in the other person's space is really important. So being like cognizant of what you have going on and where you're at, but also what your person has. And
Hmm.
so, hey, this week I can only give 10%.
Hmm.
I'm spent. Here's what's going on. I'm feeling depleted. I'm feeling tired. My back hurts. I haven't eaten in 2 days. I can't do bedtime for like this week.
Yeah.
I'm out. And then the
Yeah.
other person hopefully will say, because you have this line of communication going and you understand the needs and expectations of yourself and also your partner,
Hmm.
got you. I'll give 90% this week.
Yeah.
Not a problem.
Yeah.
Chill out.
Yeah.
And then maybe that ebbs the next week. Maybe it's a 70-30 split the next week. And then maybe it's a
Sure.
60-40. So it's
Sure.
like if you're constantly checking in with somebody on a deeper level than, hey, how are you?
Hmm.
You'll always kind of know where you need those expectations and needs and wants and like how it's gonna, you know, flow that week or that month or year or whatever.
Totally. Okay, last topic that I'll bring up, and then we will wrap up before I keep you for too long. But you know what else I'm hearing in a lot of what you're saying is the lack of community support and the
Mhm.
cultural aspect to that. And I say this because I come from Dominican Republic, where first off, hiring staff and house support is very affordable.
Mhm.
So it's, I mean, if you're like already like middle class, like you don't even have to be wealthy. Like middle class, you already can afford like a driver, a housekeeper, nannies, daycare, like all the things that families need to support them. And then there's also just the cultural aspect of like family is always there for you. There's all this community, everyone steps in and like helps raise kids and like all that sorts of stuff that I find in North America, and there's a lot of studies that have kind of proven and talked about this. It's just like so much of what we're talking about is all these things that have to get done, and we're only talking about the husband and the wife, two people. And I'm like, this is too much for even these two people. Like these two people need
Yes.
a lot of support
Yes.
and a
Yes.
village to help
Yeah.
them and the financial freedom to be able to hire supports in their lives. But that's really hard to do when now I'm learning, I don't even have kids yet, but I'm already learning that daycare is like $2,000 a month, which is like more like the cost of rent sometimes.
Right.
So
Right.
how do people like, yeah, that's just a lot.
It is a lot. And I'm happy that you brought up that example because that can be a huge problem. And so like the village looks different these days, and
Yeah.
sometimes you have to pay for the village.
Yeah.
Um, but it's worth it, and sometimes, and that also like another term for that would be like natural supports. So who are your people? It's wonderful if it's family, but it can't always be family. I mean, people like,
Mhm.
especially, I mean, I'm more familiar with North America. People are living all over the place.
Yeah.
Mom here, dad here, grandma here, aunts here. There's no, maybe years ago, it's like everyone lived in the same neighborhood. And there was also, so who are your natural supports? Is it friends? Is it family? Is it church? Is it a religious based thing? Is it a community group? Is it your gym? Like, who are your people that you can go to? If you don't have any, then we're going to work on that because you can't go at it alone.
Hmm.
And delegating to people that you pay is also huge. It's not a luxury anymore to have some type of support that you pay for, whether it's a lawn person, someone that helps you clean the home, maybe you get your groceries delivered. Like if there are things that you can invest in to buy back your time, do it.
Hmm.
We don't have to be doing everything ourselves. I mean, if you are in a place where you're able to, and I'm not saying you need to spend $1 million a month, but if there's room in your budget for even a couple $100 a month, you can do those things. And you should. So
Yeah.
yes, delegating natural supports, community engagement, and like sometimes you have to pay for the village, and like that's okay.
That's okay. Pay for
It's
the
okay.
village if you have
Pay
the
for the
money for
village.
it. Like,
Your mental health will thank you.
no, I think that's a really beautiful way to kind of end this because I think we do put like we started off with unrealistic expectations, and I think a lot of that comes from this too, is like those natural supports that should be there, and you should be getting that help, not
Yeah.
because you can't do it, but because you deserve it, but because you have so much on your plate, and kind of like undoing this belief that like we have to do it all, and the fact that we should be relying on others. I think that's a really beautiful way to kind of end this conversation and to help people who are blaming themselves for not being able to reach those expectations to kind of take the blame off and be like, wait, maybe I shouldn't even have to reach those expectations. Maybe other people should be
Yes.
helping me reach them in a
Yes,
sense.
exactly. We don't have to go at it alone.
No, no. Thank you, Alex, so much for being here. So appreciate this conversation. There's a lot of things today that I kind of brought up to you, partly because I knew they were going to be helpful for who was listening, partly because I was like, I have some theories and I want an expert in this
That's
field
my theories. I love it.
to test my theories out with them and see what they say. But thank you for being here. Where can people find you? Where should they join? I know you have a few communities and things that people can join.
Yes, I have, well, my website is alexstarkcoaching.com, and that has all the information there about all of my services and just a little bit more about me and kind of like what my approach looks like. And then also Instagram, talk to Alex Stark. I do just post a lot about burnout and kind of what that looks like and some tips and tricks. And then I also have a really great quiz. So if you're kind of curious about if are you experiencing burnout or is it just your run-of-the-mill work stress? I have a great quiz. The link is in the bio on my Instagram and on my website, where you can go in and answer some, easy questions and figure out, are you experiencing burnout or is it stress? And then you'll kind of get a customized recovery plan and some suggestions for what stage you're in.
Wow, that is so helpful. I remember when you were building that quiz and I remember looking through the questions and I was like, these are really, really helpful questions
I
just to
love the
help you
quiz.
gain, yeah,
Yes,
just to help
yes.
you
And
gain some clarity.
yeah, and the quiz is completely free. So, it just doesn't hurt, to test out if you're experiencing stress or burnout.
Yeah, that's awesome. Keep doing all the amazing work you're doing. I'm sure you're helping so many people. And thank
Yeah.
you for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It was so nice to talk to you.
You too. For anyone listening, if you want to support this podcast, feel free to do all the things like follow, subscribe, send it to your friends and family. Send this episode to someone that you know kind of needs to hear it in their life. The woman in your life that's just like doing it all, killing it, just letting her know, like, maybe a little bit of softness wouldn't hurt in including that in your daily schedule. So thank you everyone for being here. I will see you next week.